What's up, everyone? Today we're diving into something absolutely mind-blowing, the shocking truth about where Americans are actually moving in 2025. And let me tell you, this data is going to completely flip everything you thought you knew about America's growth story. Before we jump in, here's something that'll make your jaw drop. The entire map of American migration has completely transformed since the pandemic. States that were once migration magnets are now seeing their numbers plummet, while previously overlooked areas are experiencing an absolute boom. Let me paint you a picture that'll blow your mind. The South Atlantic region, those beautiful states you see in pink on our map, added a staggering 2,3,9,000 people in 2024 alone. That's like dropping an entire small city into these states. But here's where it gets really interesting. The traditional migration patterns we've all come to expect, they're getting completely turned upside down. Now, let's start our countdown with number 10, Arizona. But hold on to your hats, because this is where things get fascinating. Arizona added 3,5,000 people in 2024. But here's the kicker. That's actually one of its lowest performances in the last decade. During the pandemic peak, Arizona was pulling in 1,000,000 people. Talk about a dramatic shift. Moving on to number 9, we've got Montana. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Picture this. Montana went from being a quiet, overlooked state to suddenly welcoming over 200 new residents in 2021. That was a mind-boggling 1.9% population growth. But here's the plot twist. By 2024, that number dropped to just 5,400 people. Now, let me share something that most people don't realize about this data. We're ranking these states by their percentage growth rate from domestic migration in 2024, using fresh data straight from the U.S. Census Bureau. This isn't just random numbers, folks. This is the real-time pulse of American migration. Want to hear something that'll really make you think? Our number 8 spot goes to Arkansas. Yes, you heard that right, Arkansas. This state has transformed from a flyover state to a boom state, especially around Bentonville and Fayetteville. We're talking about Walmart's headquarters territory, folks. Arkansas welcomed nearly 1,400 new residents in 2024, achieving a 0.44% growth rate. So let me drop a truth bomb about Florida that's going to shock you to your core. Florida, once the darling of domestic migration, has fallen so far, it didn't even make our top 10 list. I'm talking about a state that added 3,150,000 people in 2022, now only pulling in 6,4,000 in 2024. That's the 5th worst level in 35 years. Can you believe it? Florida is now sitting at 14th place, behind states like Oklahoma and New Hampshire. Talk about a plot twist. But let's dive into our number 7 spot, Alabama. Now this is where things get really interesting. Alabama added 2,600 people in 2024, good for a 0.5% growth rate. But here's the fascinating part. It's all about affordability, folks. Let me paint you a picture that'll make property investors drool. Imagine getting a 2,400 square foot home, 3 beds, 3 baths, in a prime Huntsville neighborhood for just $360,000. And get this, your property taxes? A mere $2,000 a year. Speaking of affordability, let's talk about a trend that's reshaping America's migration patterns. With inflation hitting hard and mortgage rates sitting at 7%, Americans are voting with their feet. They're flocking to places where their paychecks actually mean something. Now buckle up for number 6, Nevada. This state is like the heavyweight champion of population growth over the last 3 decades. No other state has grown its population more since 1990. But here's where it gets wild. Nevada used to add 500 people a year, growing by 2.4% annually just from domestic migration. Then the 2008 housing crash hit and everything changed. Fast forward to 2024, and Nevada's still growing, but at a more modest 0.52% rate, with 1,685 new residents. Let's talk about our number 5 powerhouse possible, Tennessee. This state isn't just attracting people, it's attracting their wallets too. Why? No state income tax, baby. That's right, Tennessee joins an exclusive club of just 9 states with this massive perk, including Alaska, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. But here's where things get really juicy. Our number 4 spot goes to North Carolina, and the numbers here are absolutely mind-blowing. We're talking about 8,300 new residents in 2024 alone. That's the second highest nominal growth of any state in America. And get this, you can still snag a beautiful 3-bed, 3-bath home in Raleigh for around $375K with property taxes of just $2,500 a year. All right, here's a reality check that every potential homebuyer needs to hear, and this is serious business, folks. Just because these states are growing doesn't mean home prices are guaranteed to keep climbing. In fact, many of these boom areas could see their housing values take a hit in the next few years. Why? Because during the pandemic, home prices in these states shot up faster than local incomes could support. Think about it, that beautiful North Carolina home I mentioned earlier. The one listed for $375 VC, it sold for just $235 VC 4 years ago. That's the kind of price explosion I'm talking about, and it's happening all across these growing states. But let's get to our shocking top 3, because this is where things get really interesting. Coming in at number 3, and this completely surprised me, Delaware. Yes, you heard that right, Delaware. This little state that almost nobody talks about added 8,200 people in 2024, achieving a massive 0.78% growth rate. Here's the fascinating part about Delaware. It's technically in the South Atlantic region, but it's really becoming the new escape route for people fleeing places like Philadelphia and New Jersey. We're looking at the highest growth numbers Delaware has seen in over 34 years of recorded data. Talk about an underdog story. And sliding into our number 2 spot, Idaho. Now, Idaho's story is like a roller coaster ride that'll make your head spin. During the peak of the pandemic, this state was absolutely on fire, adding 5,200 people in 2021 for a whopping 2.7% growth rate. But here's where it gets interesting. That number has now dropped to 1,600, right back to the long-term average. And let me tell you something about Idaho's housing market that'll make you think twice. Prices there have dropped 7% since mid-2022. This is exactly what I was warning you about earlier. These boom markets aren't guaranteed to keep booming. But before I reveal our number 1 state, let's talk about another shocking development. Texas, the Lone Star State, once the crown jewel of domestic migration, has seen its numbers absolutely plummet. From a peak of 200,000 new residents in 2022 to just 8,500 in 2024, one of its lowest totals in 20 years. Texas now ranks just 15th in percentage growth, barely ahead of West Virginia. I mean, can you believe it? Now, are you ready for the big reveal? Our number 1 fastest growing state in 2025 absolutely crushed the competition. We're talking about growth that was 50% better than our second place state. This state added 6,800 people in 2024, achieving a mind-blowing 1.24% domestic migration growth rate. Drumroll please. The number 1 fastest growing state in America for 2025 is South Carolina. And let me tell you, this isn't just a fluke or a pandemic bubble. South Carolina is absolutely crushing it. The numbers here are going to blow your mind. While other states are seeing their growth slow down, South Carolina has maintained its pandemic-era momentum, adding 6,800 people in 2024 alone. That's almost double its long-term average of 35000 people. But here's what makes this story even more fascinating. South Carolina isn't just attracting people, it's keeping them. This isn't a case of people moving in and then rushing out a year later. We're seeing sustained, long-term growth that's transforming the entire state. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but what about the traditional powerhouse states? What about Florida, Texas, and Arizona? Well, let me drop another knowledge bomb that'll make your jaw hit the floor. While these traditional growth states are seeing their numbers decline, South Carolina is proving that slow and steady really does win the race. Think about this for a second. The South Atlantic region, where South Carolina sits, added 2,3,9,000 people net in 2024. That's like creating an entirely new city from scratch. And South Carolina is leading this charge, growing at a rate that's putting other states to shame. But here's the million-dollar question. Why South Carolina? What makes this state so special that it's outperforming everyone else? Well, it's a perfect storm of factors that have come together to create an absolute migration magnet. First, you've got the climate, that beautiful southern weather that's not as intense as Florida, but still gives you plenty of sunshine and warmth. Then there's the cost of living, significantly lower than many northern states and even other southern competitors. And let's not forget about the quality of life, from the beautiful beaches of Myrtle Beach to the historic charm of Charleston, and the growing job markets in cities like Greenville and Columbia. But here's something that most people don't realize about South Carolina's growth story. And this is absolutely crucial for anyone thinking about making a move or investing in real estate. So here's the bottom line, folks. South Carolina's dominance tells us something crucial about where America is heading in 2025 and beyond. We're seeing a massive shift away from the traditional boom states toward areas that offer that perfect balance of affordability, quality of life, and economic opportunity. If you want to track all these migration patterns and housing trends for yourself, head over to www.reventure app. It's a powerful tool I've created that lets you analyze population growth rates, home values, and price forecasts for every city, state, and zip code in America. Trust me, this data is absolute gold for anyone thinking about moving or investing. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell if you want to stay up to date with the latest trends in American migration patterns. Your future move might just depend on it. This is Adventera signing off, and remember, in today's America, it's not about following the crowd to the usual suspects anymore. It's about finding those hidden gems that offer real value and sustainable growth. See you in the next video.